Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. Okay, let me introduce myself and my partners. I am Risma Panjaitan and my partners is Miselia Larasati, Yodi Saputra, and Harentama Fardani. We are from Group 6. Okay, my friends, today we are going to discuss about RAROC-based capital budgeting and performance evaluation with a case study of bank capital allocation. The first time, we will start about our presentation from Miselia Larasati.
Thank you, Kak Risma. Hi, I'm Celia Larasati, and I'm going to give you the overview of the case. This journal explains about the implementation of RAROC in Bank of America. I'll divide it into 4 parts based on the sequence of events that's stated in the journal. First of all, what is RAROC? RAROC is a risk-adjusted measure of the return on investment. So if the general return of investment that we know does not consider risk, then RAROC take the element of risk into account. In the journal, RAROC stated as a risk-based allocation system that is used to provide a uniform measure of performance. The performance that we are talking about is the performance of each business unit that the bank owned. This method used to compare two or more projects or investments and choose which of them will be better to proceed. Then, before RAROC, Bank of America, just like any other bank, were relied on return on asset and return on equity to evaluate their performance. But this method only provides a little success to measure the performance on a risk-adjusted basis. Bank of America also had attempt to apply risk-based capital guideline. This method then found to be complicated. And because of that, the approach met with considerable internal resistance. Then it led us to RAROC on Bank of America. RAROC in Bank of America implemented to examine the risk-based capital allocation. RAROC is developed through Bank of America's Risk and Capital Analysis Group, which charged to develop and instituting a single corporate-wide system to allocate capital to all banks' activities. By 1995, Bank of America had developed the capability to calculate RAROC down to the level of individual products, transactions, and even customer relationship. This was a huge fuss back then, and because it's considered as the application of financial theory to real business problem. And then what happened after RAROC? After being developed by the Risk and Capital Analysis Group of Bank of America, RAROC also began to used by another banks. This method considered as a capable method to help banks avoid the risk. Other than that, this method also considered easier to be done, and the further explanation will be explained in the analysis part of this presentation. But first, let's see what are the key issues of this case, which will be explained by Mas Yodi.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. So I continue to the analysis of the key issue of this journal. Based on the journal itself, since the late of 80s, the number of large US banks have invested heavily in systems designed to measure the risk associated with the different lines of business. The immediate purpose of such risk measurement systems is to provide bank management with a more reliable way to determine the amount of capital necessary to support each of their major activities, and thus to determine the equity capital required by the bank as a whole. Let's go back to the basis reason why the financial institution exists. Because of the excess of market friction makes the gap between the interest rate at which consumer can borrow and lend. This gap is a major profit for financial institutions and exists because intermediation entails costs to overcome information asymmetries. The existence of market friction is also one of the main factors driving each bank to diversify new products based on fees and trading activities. The benefit of this condition makes division managers in every business and product lines become rent-seeking, where they will try their best to find less risky source of funding. Whereas, according to finance theory, the optimal capital structure in capital budgeting planning is determined based on a combination of equity and liabilities at a certain level which result in the lowest WCC level. For this reason, banks that are managed centrally need to measure how much influence each business unit and product has on the variability of the bank cash flow, especially those affected by economic risk due to market friction. The traditional measurement like return on asset and return on equity cannot catch the interfere of the risk, so that the regulator emphasis on capital adequacy that has come with the implementation of the Basel risk-based capital requirements issued in 1988 and passage of FDICIA in 1991. By measuring the magnitude of this influence, banks can determine the optimal capital structure level and capital allocation for each business unit and product. The ultimate purpose of this strategy is how diversification will maximize the value of the organization and the shareholders. This will be achieved if every investment and funding decision at a financial institution is based on consideration of the economic profit, and perhaps it will be generate economic value added to the organization. So, by this explanation, we can conclude that the key issue of this case consists of two issues. First, strategic issue is how organization economics approach in minimize costs and create value added to the organizations. And the second, risk management issues is how to plan the right capital allocation that generate economic profit and how to make performance evaluation of business units and products that increase value of the organization. That's all the identification of the key issue. Continue to the analysis of the RAROC and how the RAROC can make solution to these three key issue, and will be explained by Dani. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuri. Hello, I am Danny, and now I will continue the presentation. From Yuri's explanation, we can see that ERM aims to mitigate risk when the bank chooses to provide a diverse set of products and services. The risk of the bank can be credit risk, country risk, market risk, and business risk. Risk potentials that become risk events will cause losses for the bank. There are two types of losses, namely expected loss and unexpected loss. Expected loss can be mitigated by the banks by turning it back around to the customers. The mitigation is by appointing different premium risks to each loan facility based on different risk ratings. The unexpected loss is the responsibility of the bank, which can be mitigated by maintaining the capital adequacy ratio. This policy demonstrates the bank's compliance in fulfilling regulatory capital. Banks must also provide economic capital in preparation for a downturn in economic conditions. Capital is needed to fund many forms of projects, loans, and other investments. Since the capital is expensive, banks must deploy this capital with prudence. This condition forced the banks to evaluate the performance of their business units regularly. The question is how the bank justifies the capital consumption to fund each of its financial products. This brings us to the concept of RAROC. The acronym stands for Risk Adjusted Return on Capital. The RAROC model used to evaluate credit risk based on the market data. This model was pioneered by Banker Trust and has now been adopted by all the large banks in the world, such as Bank of America. The idea of RAROC is to compare the rate of return with the risky capital. The income of the loan can be calculated by adding up the spread and fee from the loan outstanding. The loan risk or the capital at risk can be calculated by multiplying the duration of the loan by the loan outstanding and the risk factor of the loan. RAROC will then be compared with the cost of capital or return on equity. If RAROC is higher than the cost of capital that is needed by a business unit, it means that the bank will get additional value from the business unit, or vice versa. That's all my explanation. After this will be continued by Risma. Please.
Thank you, Mas Danny. So it can be concluded that from the fact of imperfect capital markets, this existence of market friction has provided opportunities for financial institutions to obtain revenue streams through fee-based transactions and trading activities beside its traditional lending facilities. This requires financial institutions to diversify its products according to customer needs. The challenge that arises from this diversification strategy is that financial institutions need to determine the optimal risk-based rate of return for each business unit and its diversified products with the aim of providing the greatest possible economic value added for shareholders. For this reason, the RAROC method can be used to measure economic profit, so that financial institutions such as the bank have the power to build and sustain a value-based corporate culture. Okay everyone, this is all from us and thank you so much for your attention.